So I've been asked multiple times how I textured this house right here in the foreground of my werewolf shot. And it's actually really simple. So today I'm just going to go through and show you exactly how I did it. All right, so here I have the basic house set up in Eevee with no texturing on it. Now, one thing to take note is the house has displacement on it. So I've subdivided it quite a few times and it's got a subdivision surface on it just to make things a little bit better. That is really all that is on it. Just to add a little bit of extra detail close up. So we're going to start by adding a new shader, and I'll bring this up so I can see better. And I'm just going to find really quickly an image texture of some rocks. So now that I've got this, I just kind of have to set it up at the scale that I want. So 4 or maybe 5, and that looks like a decent scale to me. So this is a seamless image texture, and it looks okay, but it doesn't look fantastic. You have no extra details. So a lot of times stone or concrete will have leaks coming from the ceiling. You'll also have like a buildup of dirt and grime going up from the bottom. In a house like this, generally you have stone underneath of a plaster. So you'll have bricks or something and then it'll be plastered over. So there's none of those details which need to be addressed. And also just the seamless texture is not very interesting. So what I went and did was I grabbed a second image texture and found just a plain brick wall or something like this. Gave it some mapping coordinates like the other texture, and then I used a mix color node and plugged these two into each other. Then just used a simple noise texture, plugged through a color ramp, and then I took these two values and sharpened them up a little bit. Just like that. And then all I have to do is get the scale of this one right, so 6 probably, something like that, maybe 5. And if I use some RGB curves, I can lighten this up a little bit so it matches a little bit better, maybe give it a little bit more of a red tint, just to make it so it blends. All right, and when I'm happy with the noise texture and the way the color ramp is working, I can change it to 4D if I want and give a different seed, just to change the way that these things interact with each other. Now for the next part, I need another mixed color node, and this time we're gonna be working on the plaster texture. So first, I'm just gonna get a new image texture, plug it into the B value of my mixed color, and then I'm gonna go find a concrete or plaster texture. In my case, I used this texture right here. So what I'm going to do first is make sure it's scaled properly. So I think it needs to be about 2, maybe 3. And then I'll just make sure to move the location upward a little bit. And something that I think is important is I don't necessarily want these attached to the UVs because it may cause some distortion. So what I can also do is use object mode and box project these, and it'll do something like that. Now I will need to change the scale down a little bit, but it'll help it just wrap around the object. It's not going to change too much, so I'm just going to leave it as is, and we'll have something like this to work with. Now, instead of using a noise texture, I want a lot more control. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in an image texture, a brand new one, click new, and I'll just name it something like mask. And that's going to be going into my mix color nodes factor. All right, so now as you can see, we've got this texture back. That's because the mask is going to be fully black right now, and we're going to be painting white onto it. So what I'll generally do is just pick out rocks and stuff and follow that sort of contour, right? And pick out a brick and follow the contour. Just do this, hand paint this mask over top, and we'll get a nice interesting look. And you can always obscure them a little bit because we're going to be placing these on top, right? And then let's get some big paint going on here, right? I don't really remember what the actual house looked like, but it's not a problem. Either way, what we're doing is we're essentially just painting these areas out and just trying to build something that looks somewhat natural. Okay, right, so there's my wall. Hand painted and everything, and all I need to do is make sure to save the mask somewhere so that if Blender crashes, I won't lose it. The last thing I really just did was add one more mix color node, add in a new base color, and just found an image that was kind of like scorched looking. So I believe the image that I actually chose to go with was this one, this concrete dirty texture. And as you can see, you get this kind of look. So I'm going to go object mode on this one so that it wraps all the way around and ignores the UVs. And you'll see we get this, and then I just have to scale it to the proper size. And then once it's scaled to the proper size, all I got to do is make sure that it is moved downward nicely. And once it fits nicely like that, then all I did was grabbed a color ramp, and I plugged this base color into the color ramp and plugged the color ramp into the factor. And then I can bring this white value up to mix the two together like that. So what I really want is just for a little bit of scorching to happen down towards the bottom and stuff like that. And then I can make this value more of a gray value to get rid of some of the scorching. And I don't know, I think it adds a little bit to it, just a little. Right, so there's the two textures. The difference, just a small difference, but I do think it looks good. Next is setting up either, you can set up normal maps or displacement. It doesn't really matter. They both look pretty good, but essentially I'm just going to copy and paste this down here so that we have the exact same setup. And if you want, you don't have to copy and paste everything, such as these factors. These factors you can just drag from the other areas. So this noise texture I can drag into place here, and I can drag this mask into its slot here. And I don't want this scorch anyway to be affecting displacement or anything, so I'm not going to have that there. And then all you have to do is match up the walls with their displacement or their normal maps, whichever one. I'm going to do normal for the time being, even though it appears I only have displacement maps, but that's okay. And then we're going to plug these through bump nodes and plug the output out like that. And we'll see how that looks. I'm sure it's going to look a little strange. Yeah, it doesn't look horrible, but it doesn't look great either. That's how it looks with just the bump. Let's go see how it looks with displacement as well. So we're going to get rid of the bump node, and I'm going to make sure that I have displacement anywhere I can. So displacement there, very nice. And there's another displacement. I should have made sure all of these were non-color, just to make sure everything looks nice. And then we're going to plug this through a displacement texture into the height. And we'll plug it into the displacement output. And then here we go. We can set this scale to like 0.02 or 0.03, something low. Maybe we should go a little higher. I don't love this texture on here, so what I might just do is set this to a white value. And then it'll mix these two values in together. So you'll have a darker gray color for the height on these. Right, and I can throw these through an RGB curve before they mix in with the rest and darken them. So that means they'll be pushed in more. And then I can overlay it over top, and you can have this thing jut out a little bit. Now, that doesn't look too great, so let me get my subdivisions back in. Get a little more detail on there. And yeah, that's kind of the general idea. Of course, you don't have to do that. Make sure we get it set up nicely. And yeah, it's really just playing around with these settings, trying to get something that is just looks good, looks nice. So yeah, I'll just play around with these, try and make them match a little bit. Now, I believe I also turned up the mid-level a little bit, just so I have something like this. And then, yeah, if I just bring that scale back a little bit, turn that down so it's only sitting slightly on top, and then we get, you know, this displacement. I can also make it darker so it's sitting behind, which kind of looks nice, but it doesn't make much sense. I actually do think that's how I have it in my other one, but there we go. That's how you texture that. Roof is pretty much the exact same thing, except it's not at all. It's only a displacement map and a roof texture, so it ends up looking like that, which looks good. Wall is the exact same material. I didn't even bother changing it because the camera, you can't even see it from there. And all I did was just choose a spot on the UVs that I liked, like this, and maybe shrunk it in or something, you know, just like that. As far as this goes, this is just using a decent image texture. So I grabbed this board, added a new image texture, and under the textures, I went with a wood texture and just found something that looked grungy, like this. And as you can see, it's already UV unwrapped, so I don't even have to do that. But it's just a decent model over top, and then a UV unwrapped and placed on top of just individual wood planks to get a certain look. And yeah, so that's how I textured this house. It's fairly simple, mainly just a combination of a bunch of different textures and mixing them together. Since it's raining, you know, I have the roughness set to a lower amount. If it weren't raining, I would just set the roughness pretty much all the way up. That's pretty much it. A very simple process. And yeah, it works great for any sort of foreground prop if you really need a lot of detail on something. Anyway, I will see you all later. If you're interested in seeing the full breakdown video for this scene, then please go to my Patreon and check it out.